Greetings, my friends. Thanks for tuning in as always. I appreciate your support. Today, on this episode of the podcast, we have a special guest, Aamrapali. She's an international Kathak dancer, mentor, and performer from Delhi, India. Let's go ahead and welcome Aamrapali to the show, and we are very happy to have you here. So Aamrapali, thank you so much once again for coming on. It's a pleasure, to finally have you on here. So thank you once again for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Jose. That was a lovely introduction, and I'm so happy to be here. Looking forward to this
Yeah,
episode. Thanks a lot.
no problem, no problem. Like I said, I've been a huge fan of what you do, what you stand for, and everything that you do, within the community, to inspire and motivate, other people, and not just other people, but the younger generation. So that it's definitely, a pleasure to sit down and talk to you a little bit about what you do and who you are. So let's go ahead and start out with who is Aamrapali? Like, let's talk about where you're originally from, your roots, culture, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I'm Aamrapali Bhandari, and I stay in New Delhi, which is the capital in India. And I started learning Kathak. So Kathak dance is actually one of the eight Indian classical dance forms. Um, and Kathak is one of the northern Indian dance forms. And since it's a classical dance form, the training starts very early, and hence even I started learning at the age of 6 years old. When I was 6 years old,
Mm.
I started nearby. Like it was, I started as a hobby class because my father and my mom, they would take me to a class, and I would just enjoy every every class, and I was so popular there because I would just dance on any music, and they would have these little dance recitals at the end of the session, like a three month course, and then after a year they would have dance performances, and I would always be like standing out in there, and that's where my parents decided that I think I should be given like formal training, proper, to be given not just a hobby class. So I was lucky enough to find a guru. So guru is actually a concept that's very popular in India, and um, it, guru is someone who not just imparts education, but it's also a big. He or she has a big impact through their life because they've all given their lives for this art form. It's like a lifestyle for them, and the training that usually happens is under the Guru Shishya Parampara, which basically means the Guru and the student bond, or the student legacy, where we have to go to the class, and it's not just a 1 hour session or a 2 hour session that we see, but we literally have to be there for the entire day. So we have to learn. The place where I went is Kathak Kendra, is one of the national institutes in India. And there you not just have to learn dancing, but also you need to learn vocal music, instrumental music, yoga, and other theory and allied subjects because, as I said, it's a lifestyle.
Mm.
So that's where I started learning, and as and when I grew older, I started getting opportunities, especially with my guru, where my guruji's name is Pandit Rajendra Gangani, and he also comes from a legacy. So he's the seventh generation of Kathak dancers in his family, and as I said, I'm very lucky to be learning from him because he's one of India's best dance teachers and performers, I would say. Um, and so that's how my learning started. And then, because I also come from a family of academicians, both my parents are teachers. They
Mm.
always wanted me to have a degree in a subject that I like. So I went on to complete my school, and I got a degree, a graduation, like a graduate degree in English. So I studied English literature in college. I got my degree. My dancing was still going on, and then I was lucky enough. to find a dance company in Delhi. So
Mhm.
a Kathak dance company, which is run by Aditi Mangaldas ji. She's one of, again, India's finest dance, Kathak dance choreographers, choreographer and dancer. So she was in Delhi and she has a dance company, and I joined her company as a repertory member. And then I started training under her aesthetic, her legacy, and it's been now 10 years in her company, off and on. Um, I was a regular in her company for 3 years, where I traveled to a lot of countries uh, with her, performing her choreographies in biggest festivals in the world, like the Perth International Festival, or in the UK, we performed at the Sadler's Wells Theatre, and other theaters in the world like
Mhm.
Georgia and Turkey. So that happened, and then I wanted to do something for me, and I completely changed my trajectory from a performer to a full-time teacher.
Mhm.
And I moved to Singapore to teach
Mhm.
Kathak, to impart education to students who stay in Singapore. And I worked there as a teacher in CIFAS. CIFAS is the name of the institute, the Singapore Indian Fine Arts Society.
Mhm.
And I was there giving education in Kathak for 6 years. And that was an incredible experience for me, because changing my trajectory completely from being on stage, being a performer, to being a full-time teacher. And my students were not just, teenagers or kids going to school. They ranged from 6 years to 60 years. So I had older students as well. They would be so enthusiastic and come to class. And that was an incredible experience for me, I would say. And
Mhm.
then I recently moved back to Delhi. So 2024, I moved back to Delhi, moved back to India. And since then, it's been a different journey, I would say.
Mhm. Yeah, it's I love your story. It's very interesting, and I tell you because it kind of reminds me a lot of like how my journey started, right? Like,
Mm,
me growing up on the south side of Chicago, like,
mm,
I came from a very small neighborhood, and it wasn't like the best neighborhood. I kind of grew up around like a lot of violence, gangs, drugs, and shootings, and all that stuff. And so, my parents didn't really come from a lot, so there was only so much they were able to provide for me. So me,
mm,
my parents always, instilled in me, like, go to school, stay in school, do good, stay focused, stay inspired. And
mm,
that's what I did, right? That's what I did. So I went to a small
mm,
high school in the neighborhood. And I remember, I had music, art, and drafting, architectural drafting classes. Those were my
mm,
favorites, right? I was never going to be like a book student by the books. Like, I was not going to be one of those students. I don't know why. I kind of knew very early on, kind of like you, right? Like, as soon as like you mentioned earlier, you said, as soon as I started going to dance classes, I fell in love with it.
mm.
And that's kind of what happened with me.
Yeah.
Like, the minute I went to like art classes, to my art classes, and to my like architectural drafting classes, like that's what really did it for me, right? That's what really like opened up the door for me artistically and creatively. And so I kind of stuck with that. And eventually, like, I was supposed to be an architect, right? Like, I was supposed to be an
Mm,
architect. I was supposed to go on to college and pursue architecture, and eventually get a degree in architect, and be a designer, and architect, engineer, and stuff like that. But during my teens, like right around 18, like 17, 18 years old, like, I kind of just picked up a camera, just kind of for the fun of it, right, as a hobby. And
mm,
I kind of just like, I had friends that were like musicians and DJs, and in the music industry. And so, I remember them telling me, like, "Hey, Jose, we need someone to come out to this event or party and take some pictures and just kind of capture some moments," right? And so I said,
mm,
"Okay, okay, cool, yeah, right, I'll go, I'll do it," right? And it became a hobby, and then it was fun, and then eventually like there was promoters, and the promoters were like, hey, I'll pay you like to come out and take pictures and cover the event. And then I was like, wow, like I could get paid for this to do what I like and have fun, like yeah, sure, why not, right?
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and then eventually like it just started taking off from there. Like, I started getting more events, more stuff. And then eventually, like with time, I dabbled into like weddings and private events and stuff like that. And then fast forward to get to the point where I'm at now, So kind of you talking about your story, like how it starts. I like to share with everyone that I think it all starts with a small idea that eventually makes its way to becoming your biggest passion, whatever it is in life, um, whether it's like you just said, like, the dancing part of it, the creative side of it. I think it starts with something. And, I think you saw it for yourself very early on that dancing was something that was really something that made a lot of sense to you, and you were passionate about it. So you kind of kept it going, and that's
Mm.
that's actually pretty cool. Now I know I know for a fact that you've devoted so much of your time, and interest and passion to your dancing. Now, when you're not dancing, what are some of your favorite hobbies that you kind of like enjoy doing on your free time?
That's a very, very interesting question because, as you rightly said,
Hmm.
dancing has always been part of my life.
Hmm.
And even when I didn't want to dance, I was very, very smartly by the universe or God nudged into dancing.
Hmm.
Because of course, when you're growing up, there's peer pressure, then teenage, and then you go to a new college. There's
Hmm.
so much, so much that you see. And then, of course, our generation has seen a lot of change, from
Hmm.
cassettes to CDs to now like Apple, and that we've also evolved in that sense, if we talk about the economy and technology.
Hmm.
So we've always been on our toes, right?
Right.
So so dancing is, again, it's been a love and hate relationship with dancing
Hmm.
because it's never left me. But apart from dance, as I said, because it's always been part of my life, I thought that this is something that will always be with me. So it never stopped me from trying other things.
Hmm.
And that also comes from where I grew up, because Delhi, and especially my house, my mom, she is a sports teacher. She was a sports teacher. She recently retired from a school, as I said, and she always had that discipline and sportsman spirit. And she always pushed us, to try different things. My dad is very progressive. He always wanted to. I have a sister also, and both girls. He never stopped us from doing anything. He's like, if you like it, you go for it,
Hmm.
whatever it is. So
Hmm.
I, as a child, did a lot, starting from modeling as a child model, or gymnastics. I did skating, all the sports. I am not good at sports, but because of my mother, I had to do a lot of sports
Hmm.
growing up. And then apart from that, I really like to style myself, wear nice clothes and, see what works for my body. I'm also a huge fan of hairstyling.
Hmm.
So if I wasn't a dancer, I would be a hairstylist because
Hmm.
I'm so passionate about it.
Hmm.
And not just on other people, but like on my own self. Like, I experiment with colors and cuts and, read about it. And recently I picked up a new hobby, crocheting, and that's very meditative.
Hmm.
I just pick up a yarn and I just crochet,
Hmm.
and it just calms me down. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
It's
that's something that I started doing.
it's interesting you say that, the crocheting, because my grandmother used to do that a lot, and I used to watch her back in Mexico, like when I was small. I
Mm,
would just sit there and
mm,
watch her. She would sit on her rocking chair, and she would just like sew away
mm,
and just do all kinds of stuff,
yeah.
sweaters and all this different stuff. And I thought that was so cool because even though it sounds
Mm.
like anyone can do it, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. It's
Mm.
just like anyone else. When you have a
Yeah.
certain passion or hobby, it's sometimes it's easier said than done, but it's not always that easy. Like I know that if I tried it, I'm sure I couldn't even put the thread together or understand how to thread it. So it's definitely, got its challenges. Um, Now I know that, again, in the dancing world, who would you say have been some of the dancers that have inspired you growing up and that eventually like paved the way for you in the Kathak dancing, culture?
So definitely first is my guru, as I said, Pandit Rajendra Gangani. He has been my idol. He's been my biggest inspiration, because he's not just an excellent performer,
Mhm.
an excellent he has an excellent stage presence, but he's also an equally good teacher. So, not many people can do both because, they're two different, it's like wearing two hats.
Mhm.
But he is someone who I really look up to because when I shifted to Singapore to teach, um, I had to start from scratch because I had no experience in teaching.
Mhm.
So I literally had to go back down the memory lane and go down the memory lane to know how my teacher started, teaching me and how I learned, how I picked up things, and I had to rewire myself and find creative ways on how he did it. So I would always think, oh, how would my teacher, would do this if he was stuck here? So, that's something that really inspires me. Apart from him, of course, Aditi Mangaldas ji, she's been a great help and a great teacher. She's also based in Delhi, and she experiments a lot with the contemporary thought. So my
Mhm.
Guruji is primarily a traditional Kathak artist
Mhm.
who is, as anybody would say, a purist. He takes, and I take pride in telling that because he again he comes from a lineage, so he's
Mhm.
carrying that lineage in his own way of expressing how Kathak and his body
Mhm.
does. But Aditi Didi, in that sense, Aditi Didi is something that we address who's older, so that's why I say Didi. So Aditi Didi is somebody who has taken that traditional Kathak repertoire and turned it into her own movement vocabulary with having contemporary sensibilities. And
Mhm.
that is something that's very inspirational because she's able to communicate in a very different language, when
Mhm.
she dances. She's able to talk about topics that usually we don't talk in Kathak, especially in classical.
Mhm.
Like female sexuality or, things like brutality and divinity within oneself. So
Mhm.
all of those things she challenges all those norms and creates something that's true to her expression. So I really get inspired by her courage. Apart from that, there have been many Kathak gurus that have been on the list, like Birju Maharaj ji, Durga Lal ji, and Gitanjali Lal ji. And not just that, but even my seniors, because it's like, of course, gurus and teachers are somebody who you look forward to
Mhm.
and who you want to be like. But our seniors are, in my head, they are like milestones. That okay, guru, the teacher is a level that we want to achieve, but it's so good to see and look at our seniors who have done so much. So they are also like our inspiration,
Mhm.
and things that we cannot directly ask our teachers, we go to our seniors and ask them, and ask for guidance. So in that sense, Gauri Divakar, Vidhalal ji, all these seniors are very close to me, and I really get inspired by, and a lot of other people as well, who are not just from Delhi but all across the world, I would say.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's I like how you kind of express that because it's a very similar feeling on my end as well too as a photographer and director, right? Like there's always going to be someone that you have to like, kind of like follow in their footsteps and look up to as mentors or, educators. And for me, it's the same thing, right? Like I have, you know, great, other friends and colleagues that are photographers and directors and cinematographers and writers and screenwriters and producers. And so, for me, it's always been very important, like not it's not just about like trying to figure out like who they are, but every time like I if I get the opportunity to meet someone and sit down with them and do an interview with them, um it's always very interesting to hear their side of the story and how they got from point A to point B, and their struggles and their hardships and their hard times. And I learn a lot from all that stuff. It's very inspiring to kind of hear other people stories, because that's some of the stories that I hear from other people are very similar to my upcomings, and so that for me
Mm.
is like very, it's very interesting and it's very inspiring, and motivating to like hear them talk about how they went from this to that, and eventually they came out on the other side, very very successful and doing a lot of big things that not a lot of people would have thought they could have done. So yeah, it's
Mm.
interesting, like the mentors and educators. Like earlier you mentioned that both your parents are educators. I think that's like super cool. I really do. I look up to educators and teachers and professors because, like I said, it's those professors that I had in my younger years that inspired me
Mm.
to be who I am, right? I don't
Mm.
think I would have been the creative person that I am now if it wasn't for them, right? And
Mm.
there in
Mm.
high school I had a very very extremely strict English teacher. His name was Mr.
Mm.
Duvall, right? His name was Mr. Duvall, and everyone thought he was really mean and very strict, and he was very firm, right? Like he expected everyone to be on class on time. He expected you to sit in your correct chair and seat, where you're assigned. He expected for you to take notes in class, to do your assignments. And at first everyone would think like, wow, this class is no fun, like you can't have fun with this
Mm.
teacher, like he's very strict. But you know what I realized at the end of that class is that he
Mm.
only wanted us to be better. That's it, you know? And sometimes for me, I always feel like sometimes the stricter teachers are actually the best ones, you know?
Yeah.
There's always a certain way, right? There's a certain way you can talk to people, right? Like obviously you don't want to be a rude educator or instructor, but or professor, but there's very specific ways of how you can talk to a student and really make them understand like, hey, listen, I'm the teacher, I care about you as a student. When you leave my class, I want to make sure that you gain something out of my class for the future, you know um
Yeah.
and I think that's what happened with me, right? Like he was teaching me about The Great Gatsby, The Crucible, like all these books, The Scarlet Letter, all these books that eventually became novels and eventually became movies, so to me that was
Yeah.
interesting. I was in class learning about this, and fast forward years later, like they're making like huge movies about these kind of novels and books, so
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
it's always interesting, like what kind of student you choose
Mm.
to, you could choose to be a student that doesn't go to class, doesn't do your assignments, doesn't pay attention to the student, to the teacher,
Yeah.
or you can be that student that
Yeah.
even though you're not crazy about that subject, you're not crazy about sitting in that chair and listening to the
Yeah.
lesson, but still learn something at the end of the day and take something with you, you know?
Correct.
So I
Correct.
think,
Correct. Correct.
yeah, so I think there's a bigger purpose moving forward. Now, eventually, as as a, as you go on in life with, your dancing and your passion, like who are some of your family members that inspired you along the way, as you continue to do, your dancing and, all that stuff?
Yeah, that's a very nice question again, because
Thank you.
growing up, my mother was somebody uh, who was not just an inspiration, but a great supporter.
Hmm.
Because you need a lot of support if you want to go in a field like creative, a creative field, whether it's dancing or music. Then my dad, I remember my father used to take me to dance classes. He would
Hmm.
wait outside the class, and then he would have a tiffin ready for me to eat something, and
Hmm.
then I would come back. My mother would help me do my homework, whatever we would get. So it's like, I would say, not just inspiration, but also a lot of support. And
Hmm.
even today, my parents are a huge help, and I'm so, so grateful to them,
Hmm.
because they've always been so supportive of, because at the end of the day, my parents only want our happiness, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
whether it's, um, whether it's by following a passion or doing a job somewhere. At the end of the day, they're like, you have to be happy in what you do, and we don't want to see you crying, or we don't want to see you unhappy. So whatever you need, that's
Yeah.
something that I've always learned. And my sister also, my younger sister, even though she's younger, she's very wise, and she's very, very old, I would say, old soul. So she also guides me a lot. She motivates me through her perspective. And sometimes, when I'm stuck or when I'm handling too many things, I go to her for advice, and
Hmm.
she would strategize things and tell me. And more than family, I would say, my friends that I've made along the way who are in the field of dance, all across the world, who I would just, really thankful to connectivity of WhatsApp or social media, through which I'm able to connect with so many people who are like family now.
Hmm.
So whenever I travel to any part in India, whether it's Mumbai or it's somewhere in Tamil Nadu, like Chennai, I have friends who are like family, and they don't let me stay in a hotel. They'll be like, "No, you have to come and stay in my house. Treat this as your own house." So I
Hmm.
feel dance has given me so much. Art has given me so much. Not just you know, success is not just when I'm on stage, but connection and the kind of people I've met along the way.
Hmm.
It's incredible. I'm really, really grateful.
Yeah, and you actually, you kind of like, you hit it right on the spot, because I was actually going to go into that next segment of the next question. As I was saying, like you hit it right on the point with that last question, or with that last answer that you were telling me about, how important, your family and your parents were, growing up, in your whole life with that. So as we go on to the next part of the segment of the next question, this is a very interesting question, because I've seen some of your performances. I've seen some of your videos where you're performing live and stuff like that, and I think it's really interesting, like how you get into your zone right before you're gonna go on stage and perform. So let's go ahead and start out by saying, like, as a very experienced artist and dancer and performer, what are some of the key elements that are important to you when you're about to, get on stage and start your, dancing show, or, performances?
Thank you for that question again, because everybody, whoever comes to watch the show, they only watch what's happening,
Hmm.
and it's so incredible and so nice that you're asking this question, because
Hmm.
people need to know what
Yeah.
happens before that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
yeah. So yeah, so I think it's not just it doesn't just start in the green room and right before I go on stage. I think the preparation starts way before, you know. It is when the show date is finalized and when the rehearsal dates are finalized. Like, this is how the rehearsal schedule is going to be like, and this is how we're going to show up every day. It's like we rehearse. Of course, we go in the studio, we practice, but we practice as if we are already on stage. So it's like already rehearsing a performance. That basically means that you're performing. So
Mm.
in our heads, it's like saying that this rehearsal is the last rehearsal before you go on stage. So that's how you do it.
Mhm.
So even so the right kind of rehearsal is when this is how I do it. Like when I show up for a rehearsal, there is a preparation even before that. So like your own self practice. So if it's a group choreography, then I have to prepare myself at a personal level and then re- go in the studio space and rehearse just like in a performance. And in a rehearsal, it's about the sequence that you're learning. Apart from that, your strength, the body flexibility, the mindset, repetition, practice, practice, practice as
Mhm.
much as possible. And practice is something that is not just essential, but I think it's something that um, is part of each artist's blood, or it runs in the veins because um, the more you practice, the more you go deeper in it, and you realize that okay, there's more to this. There's more to this. How can we perfect this? How can we get better at it?
Mhm.
And to a point that in my head, it's not a perfect outcome, but it's something that I'm satisfied and content. That okay, I know enough to forget it. like it's like now it's in my muscle memory
Mhm.
that I don't have to think before going on stage, or when I'm on stage, I don't have to think what I'm doing. And then I can literally put my intention in between the spaces
Mhm.
and dance in the spaces between the movements. So that is what the intensity of the rehearsals, and that is the rigor, you know,
Mhm.
that that everybody has to go through before a performance.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I thank you for kind of explaining that because, like I said, most people don't see the behind the scenes, of what happens before. Most people see like, once they're there, they see the performance. And that's kind of how it is. Same thing for me, like, nobody sees the behind the scenes of when I do a photo shoot or when I'm, working on a film project or anything else, or what goes on behind the scenes. Everyone just kind of sees the finished product at the end. But there's always like, a big team behind every step of the way that you do, and there's other people involved that help you along the way, to kind of
Yeah,
accomplish your job and do what it is that you want to do. Um, now.
there's actually a very interesting story
Uh-huh,
related to this.
uh-huh.
I recently had a performance in Mumbai, and this is something that happened quite recently, I think 21st of March. And I was performing with another friend of mine. We were doing a duet together.
Mhm.
So he was doing a duet, like he was doing a solo. His was the opening act. Then I had to go on stage, do my solo, and then there was a 2.5, 3 minute break in between, and
Mhm.
then we would go do a duet at the end. That was the end of the show. So
Mhm.
that 2.5 minute was for me to change and get into costume for the last piece.
Mhm.
And so it was just him and I, and so we decided that he would take over in that 2.5 minutes, and he would do a solo, like an extension of something or a preset to the duet.
Mhm.
And in that time, I would change my costume, or I would get into the zone of the duet. And it was difficult because I would just get 2.5 to 3 minutes to change the entire costume,
Wow.
which is like, from the whole traditional to separate attire,
Uh-huh.
the top and the bottom. I'd have to change my hairstyle. So I'll have to let go of the hair accessories,
Wow.
change my accessories, change my makeup. And it is so funny and also surprising that I was able to do that well in time, two
Wow.
and a half minutes, and I was before time on stage. So when I did that, I came back home and I was thinking about it.
Hmm.
And I was like, so how was it so seamless? How was it that I was able to, completely change the attire? And not just that, So
Uh,
in that moment, I thought I would change my hairstyle and I would do something like with open hair. So
uh,
it was, so I opened my hair and it became a little frizzy. So I put a little bit of water. I sprayed, me being so passionate about hairstyling, I
uh-huh.
sprayed a little bit of hair and I blow dried it also. So I blow dried the hair within that 2.5 minutes. And then I was like, how is that possible? It's
Hmm.
just practice. I have been doing that my entire life. So all these little shows that I've done over the years,
Hmm.
all these, with my gurus, with other artists, the collaborations, because I've been so open about working with so many people
Yeah.
that all these things, all these experiences actually was a compound result to a seamless changeover.
Yeah.
And so anything that you do in life doesn't go waste.
Yeah.
It's just your passion, and just keep doing what you're doing, and it'll just make sense one day.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like all those years and performances that you did over the years prepared you for that moment, prepared you for those
Yeah,
2.5 minute moment to do a quick turnaround, and
yeah.
it's interesting you say that because something similar happened to me as well too. Like
Mm,
I remember a couple years ago I was shooting a very special private event and that day, I don't know what it was, but that day I remember I usually like to have 2 or 3 extra charged batteries for my camera. And that day
mm,
I'm always prepared, um, I have um I have OCD, right? And so,
mm,
I have a little bit of the obsessive compulsive thing. And
mm, mm,
to me as a photographer, like my equipment has to be on point all the time. My lenses, my body cameras, my memory cards, everything that I have equipment wise or gear, it always has to line up correctly, and I don't ever go out unprepared, right? Because you never know.
mm.
And I remember this day,
Yeah.
um, I don't know what it was, but I only took like 2 batteries, and I usually take
Mm,
3, and I took 2.
mm,
And for some strange reason, my battery halfway into me shooting and starting to get coverage, it just like died out on me. Like the camera just like shut off on its own. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so I always have a plan B because that's how I'm wired, right? Like that because of my OCD. So I'm wired to always have a plan B. But that day I
mm,
was like, wait a minute. And so I'm looking, I go to my bag and I can't find the second battery. So I'm already freaking out, right? I'm like, oh my God, like where's my second battery? Like I know I put 2 batteries in this, I know I took 2 batteries. Like where's the other one? And I'm thinking like, oh
mm,
my God, I think I'm gonna have to like finish here. This like I'm gonna cancel because I have no means or ways of continuing to grab coverage, right? And so
mm.
I reach into my pants, into my right pocket, and the battery was
Mm.
right there. The extra battery was in my pocket.
Oh.
And so I
Mm,
pulled it out, I put it into my camera and it turned on and I was ready to go. And I
mm.
was thinking kind of like you too, right? I took a moment
Yeah.
once I pulled my battery out and I put it in and I was ready to go. After everything slowed down, I took a moment to like kind of think about it and say, when did I put that battery in my pocket? I don't rem
Wow.
I don't remember pulling it out of my backpack to put it in my
Mm,
pocket. When did I do that? But it's like you said, years of me doing this, I was so trained
mm.
to always just have a backup plan for when it was going to
Yeah.
happen, you know? And so I think as artists and performers, like I think it's our job, because again, my job is also to be on stage with the talent and whoever I'm covering, to always be there
mm,
and capture the moment, right? So that's important for me. I'm sure when you've performed, you've seen or you've had, videographers or photographers alongside, near you or around you, like filming you and taking pictures of you, and again,
yeah,
that's part of the process, right? Like it's a team, right? It's like a team collaboration, right? Like, you know,
mm,
everyone plays a certain role, right? When you're on stage,
mm,
someone plays a certain role. And in the end, when the photographer or the videographer, capture the moment of you dancing, and you look at it, you're like, wow. And then sometimes it's even interesting, because then sometimes I'm sure you probably look at the footage and say like, wow, I didn't know I did that, or I didn't know I,
yeah,
I turned around like that, or I spinned around like that, and so there's a lot of little things that us as artists and creatives and as performers like yourself, that when we get in the zone, we're able to catch those moments, those important moments,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
now and I think we talked about this before, and I mentioned it to you before, but let's talk a little bit about the culture, because man, I know I feel like there's a lot of, and I haven't, it's not just me, I've heard it from other people, right? But there's a lot of similarities between the Indian and the Mexican culture. And I'll tell
mm,
you, like I was, looking, and I noticed some of the things, like for us Mexicans, we have what's called the tortilla, which is like, a
mm,
round shaped, corn. Sometimes it could be flour, tortilla,
mm,
that we use a lot. It's a staple in our culture, right? Like we eat it almost with everything, tacos, rice,
mm,
with beans,
mm.
with meat. I mean, it's one of our biggest staples, and I know you guys have something similar, like the roti or the chapati, right? Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
So
correct.
that's one, right? The other one that I know
Mm,
I noticed is like, we have something called the churros. The churros are like
yeah,
the sugared, sweet flavored,
mm,
and then
correct, correct.
you guys got the, what is it called?
The gulab jamun, is
There
it?
you go. There you go. Those. Yes, yes. Yeah, and
Mm,
then,
mm,
and then following, um the spices. You guys love spices,
yeah,
and we do too.
yeah,
Like Mexicans love hot, spicy food. And it's so interesting, because like I was looking at, all the things that, Indian and Mexican culture have in common, and that's very interesting. Also,
mm,
The Kathak dancing culture.
mm, mm,
We have something called the baile folclórico, which is like the folkloric
okay,
dancing. You know, if you
mm,
haven't heard about it or you haven't seen it, like I'll,
mm,
when we get off the phone, I'll definitely send you a link and a video so you can take a look at it. But
mm,
it's very similar, because the women that dance to this type of, dance and culture, in the Mexican culture,
mm,
they have their handmade dresses, with the very
mm,
colorful, vibrant dresses. Um,
yeah,
and so it's a lot of stuff that I noticed, because I have other Indian friends, in the culture, and I remember sometimes they'll
yeah,
talk to me and they'll say like, man, we have a lot of things in common, like, with the Mexicans and you and
mm,
us, and I've noticed that, and that was something I wanted to bring up to you, because I think it's so interesting. Like, even though we're like on opposite, sides of the world,
yeah,
we kind of have a lot of similarities and stuff like that. And so,
yeah,
that to me was kind of interesting. Now, I know for a
yeah,
fact that, throughout your journey, in the dancing as an educator,
mm,
even you just growing up trying to figure out, what you want to do in life, there's always, ups and downs and everything. Now,
mm,
how would you say, or how important would you say that mental health is in this industry or in this world?
mm. I mean, I am an advocate of mental health. Like I really, really feel
Mm-hmm.
like talking about it every time,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel it's very important
Mm-hmm.
because we tend to, especially in today's day and age where it's such a fast-paced world, we tend to forget about what's happening in the internal landscape, and
Mm-hmm.
especially for performers, and especially for people who are pursuing a career in dance or performing arts. Um, so I think a lot of things need to be talked about. A lot of things need to be taken taken into consideration. Like especially, so first thing that I've also learned the hard way, and I'm still figuring that out for me, is perfectionism and self-criticism. Because that takes a toll on your mental health. That takes a toll because because we are so in, engraved in practicing. It's in our routine that we have to show up for rehearsals
Mm-hmm.
and get it right. We'll keep doing until we get it perfect. It's not good enough. It's not perfect. It's not good enough. Keep going. Keep going. It also, of course, it's something that we have to go through because it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
But that constant self evaluation slowly erodes the confidence at some level. So one has to really find that thin line between when that dialogue, that inner dialogue, is turning into self-criticism, or it's actually helping you getting better. So
Mm-hmm.
that is something that one really has to. And I'm also going through that. And with every project, it's quite difficult for me to find that balance. Like constant comparison, especially in today's day and age with performing arts and social media. We're so constantly seen,
Mm-hmm.
and the comparison can ruin mental health. So that is something that probably we should also take into consideration. And I think thirdly and the most important is burnout,
Mm-hmm.
because we as artists, I feel, whether it's performing art or any other creative field, which of course, like photography, filmmaking, music, even like digital art,
Mm-hmm.
painting, um, there there is physical exhaustion, which is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because we are so driven by passion, we are so driven by motivation to complete the project, we forget that it's not just about the finished product. It's also about that journey and the process, and we cannot be numb to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real thing. That's a real thing, because the body just gives up
Yeah.
after a point. Body gives up, and you call it laziness, or you call it that just being lethargic, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
burnout, and body gives you signs. And I think that these are some things that artists need to be aware of, and it's
Mm-hmm.
it's real. And if anybody's going through that, they should talk about it to their peers. They should voice this. It's okay. It's okay to go through that. It's valid. You know.
Yeah, no, I,
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. And I'll tell you something, and I'll share something with you. I personally myself, I'm a huge advocate for the mental health, right? Because back, I mean, almost about 15, 16 years ago, I lost my dear mother, right, to cancer. And
Hmm.
and so
Oh.
yeah, so it was tough, right? It was tough. And like I heard you mentioned earlier today, like how important your parents have been in your life. And
Yeah.
parents are like the backbone to the family, right? They're the ones that keep
Hmm.
they're the ones that keep everything together. Um, and so,
Hmm.
when my mom passed away, it was kind of tough for me. And then I tried to kind of, move forward with it, and kind of like adapt and try to figure out, like, what can I do to like kind of stay active, and not think so much about that. So, and then
Hmm.
I was doing pretty good, right? And I think, thanks to my passion for my art, and my photography and all that stuff, it kind of gives me closure, right? Like, I'm able to, like, distract myself a little bit with my art. But then came the pandemic, right? So the pandemic came around,
Yeah.
And, my father was already sick. He was already having like heart issues, and he was diabetic. And so when the pandemic hit, he actually got really sick to the point where
Mm.
he ended up in the hospital. He had complications, and he actually passed away
Mm.
like during the pandemic, so very early
I'm
on.
really sorry to hear
N-
about your
n-
parents.
Thank you.
So
No,
sorry about.
thank you. I appreciate it. But very early on, I was I was hit with the reality that I needed to figure out how I was going to move forward from
Mm.
this, right?
Yeah.
First my dear mother, then my father. And so by the time the pandemic was around the corner, I was I was at a breaking point where I
Mm.
literally just wanted to give up on my passion for art. I literally
Mm.
was. I hit a dead end wall, and
Yeah.
that was probably one of my hardest, like, moments in my career and in my life. And I remember clearly, like, I'm like, I either have to figure something out, and I have to do something about
Mm.
this, or it's
Mm.
just going to spiral down out of control. And so that's when I turned to mental health and, therapy and all that stuff. And that's kind of what kind of turned me around. That's why when, when there's an opportunity for me to talk to someone about mental health,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that, and especially the people that, if I know, that are close to me,
Mm.
I'm gonna have that conversation with them. I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna have
Yeah.
that because I've been there, done that, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
perfect example of, like, hey, listen, I was there. I know how it feels. But there's always light at the other end of the tunnel, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so
Mm.
so yeah, it's difficult, and that's why I like to ask that question in a lot of my interviews, because
Mm.
everyone, I'll put it to you like this:
Yeah.
since I've done my podcast interviews, I've asked
Mm.
that question to everybody, and everybody struggles with mental health. So to me, it's
Correct.
very important. It's very important that I ask that question all the time, because everyone has a different story for me, you know? And
Definitely.
yeah, and
Definitely.
and it's something very interesting. But like I said, as advocates, me and you, our job is to kind of continue to advocate for this, and let people know, like, hey, listen, there's ways of getting help. You can talk to other people, and there's no need
Yeah.
for you to struggle with this on your own,
Mm.
you know? Um,
Yeah.
so now
Correct.
so now let's move on. And here's definitely a big question that
Mm.
you're like the right person to answer this question for the upcoming generations, the young generations,
Mm.
and the future generations of dancers and performers. This is very obviously, this is a very highly respected profession that you've been doing and that you're passionate about. What advice would you give
Mm.
other women out there that want to pursue a career in this field?
Um, I think the advice would be, of course, first to ask yourself why you want to do this. Is it just passion? Why is it that you choose? Does it make you feel something? Does it make you feel lighter? Do you like the process? All of those things. First, to question yourself to why you want to do it or want to pursue this.
Hmm.
And secondly, once you find that answer, and of course, not everybody finds it initially, because once you start learning it, it unfolds into some other kind of adventure, and other things open up. And I've seen a lot of girls, a lot of women starting the journey of Kathak as a dancer, and they have completely changed their careers. Somebody has become an artist manager, somebody with that information or that training of Kathak has completely taken a different turn, and has started doing dance movement therapy,
Hmm.
with that knowledge. So it's like once you know, that this is something that interests you, you have to start training and
Mm.
proper training, going for classes, not just go to YouTube, learn. It's like under a guru, under a reputed institute or a teacher, start the training, your own riyaz. We call it riyaz. It's like self-practice.
Mm.
And there is no shortcut. There is no shortcut. It's the only way is through. So one has to go through this. One has to practice. One has to find your expression. And ultimately, I think for any artist is to evolve into the highest, most authentic self, which basically enables you to voice, your expression. So what I mean is that as an artist, you find your voice eventually.
Mhm.
Once you start training in a field, especially like when it comes to movement, you find your voice, and that is the goal of each artist, to be able to express in their voice. And even for me, I've been trying to find my voice as an artist.
Mhm.
Um, it doesn't matter when you start. It doesn't. Age is just a number. So if you like it, it's not that it's very late. Just start.
Mhm.
Especially women, because um, I come from a culture where, of course, uh, women always have,
Mhm.
struggled, and women have chosen to stay back at home, rear children, and it's like sometimes they don't even want to do it, but because of family, because
Mhm.
of pressure, many women I know in my circle have given up dancing because of a lot of pressure.
Mm.
Um, so so yeah, I mean, in the midst of all of that, also some women have been very bold and courageous to go after what they like, and yeah. So I think it's when you start, and it doesn't matter what age you start,
Mhm.
just you find the way, the passion. Yeah.
Yeah, so as I was saying, like,
Mm.
clearly your trajectory has proven that, you've built a name for yourself all these years. Tell us a little bit more about overcoming some of your struggles or hardships or some of your challenges along the way.
Mm. Yeah, so I think every field has their own set of challenges and a whole set of setbacks that one faces. And for me, it has been finding the right way to do it. It's like when we start dancing, we don't have any idea that this is so you have to do a course, and then after the course you will get a job, and after the job, I mean, it's never like that.
Mhm.
It's always as in how you evolve as a dancer, and how much effort you put on a daily basis. Um, so for me, the setback has always been that the future has always been very ambiguous to me, and I think that's okay. Initially, I used to really fret about it because I'd be like, okay, I've completed like 8 years of this course, and now I should have something substantial. But it doesn't work like that in a performing arts field. It's like how you show up every day for your art, what you do on a daily basis, how you ground yourself. And I think that is something that I now have accepted, that things are going to be like this. There's no destination. The process is the destination.
Mhm.
And realizing that is very important. So initially it was difficult for me to accept it, but now I know that there is no goal. The goal is to be you.
Mhm.
The goal is to, be your own authentic self. And the other setback, or I would say um, uh, some sort of hardship, is
Mhm.
I think lack of consistent opportunities, and hence financial instability.
Mhm.
And I think that is valid for every field, you know,
Yeah.
because till a certain point, once you've not made a name for yourself, or you're still practicing, you're still an upcoming artist, there are not many opportunities.
Mhm.
But one has to understand that if you practice, if you are best in what you do, there will be opportunities and people will notice you. You
Mm.
will get the right kind of people and the right kind of community that will help you. And there are good people.
Yeah.
I am so like sure of that. That like people keep saying that we don't have opportunities, we don't have enough shows, and that's true for most of them, most of the part. But I feel if you are talented, if you are hardworking, and if you are positive, I feel opportunities will come to you and people will promote you, people will recommend you, you will find the right people. It's just you have to be open and vulnerable and honest about who you are and why you're doing this.
Yeah. No.
So, what once was a setback or a hardship, it can be, like something that's really, really beneficial for you in the future.
Yeah,
Mm.
you definitely hit a lot of good points there because I think both of us as artists um and creatives, I think it's a really important, and I share this with a lot of people, and most of my guests that have been on the podcast, I share this same story. I think for us as artists, we have to be prepared mentally. We mentally have to be prepared. Like you said, there's no set destination where this is going to take us. There's no guarantees,
Yeah.
right? Like, I've been doing this for almost 3 decades, and
Mm.
it never came easy for me. And never, I have people, that have seen my work, have seen the kind of people I've worked with, and they say, "Wow, you're lucky. You have a cool job. Like, I wish I could do what you're doing."
Mm.
And I'm thinking to myself, right? Like, no, you have no idea how hard I've struggled to get to where I'm at, you know? And
Mm.
I still
Mm.
don't feel like I'm 100% where I want to be, right? Like,
Mm.
like
Mm.
it's easier said than done, right? It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
And along the years, along the way, I've had a numerous amount of upcoming photographers that wanted
Mm.
to get into this industry, and I was nice enough to be a mentor,
Mm.
an educator, and to guide them in any way that I could, right? And most of them, maybe, if I had to say, in my career span of 30 years, I would have
Yeah.
to say that I think maybe about 10 photographers came to me at different points of my life wanting to pursue photography, right? And if I had
Mm.
to tell you how many are still doing it right now out of those 10, I'm going to tell you that maybe there's only one. Maybe there's only one.
Mm.
So, so the moral of the story here is, it's if you get into the field of arts,
Yeah.
you have to be prepared to be disappointed, to struggle, and to have hardships, because that's part of the game. That's part of it. Like,
Yeah.
what, I like to tell everyone, you need to have thick skin to do this. You have to.
Mm.
There's going to be people that are going to tell you, no, I'm not interested. No, I don't like your work, or no, I'm not really feeling it. And that's okay. That's okay, because your art is
Yeah.
not for everyone. It's not for everyone, right?
Yeah.
But
Mm.
you said something very important earlier. You said you have to be unique in your own way. You have to be able
Mm.
to do very specific things that only you can do, and that you stand out from the rest. That's important. That's
Yeah.
really important as an
Yeah.
artist, because that sets you apart from the rest, you know? And so
Yeah.
for me, it's always been not to be better than other photographers or directors, not to do the best work better than them. For me, it's always been like, okay, Jose, what can you do styling different? Like, how can you style your work differently that's going to
Mm.
set you apart from those other photographers or directors out there? Like my mind
Mm.
always tells me, you don't want to be better than them. You don't have to be better than them. you just have to do something different that comes within yourself with your art. And then that's when the light bulb turns on in my head. And I'm like, oh man, you know what? I just thought about a good idea. Like, I'm going to try this and I'm going to do this. And then eventually that ends up becoming like part of me. And then eventually
Yeah.
that's the part that people like or look at and like to, observe, because then they say like, wow, I've never seen that before. That looks crazy. That's different.
Mm,
That's definitely something different, you know? So
mm,
I think, I think you're right. Like, I think we have to be happy with ourselves first, right?
yeah.
And it's important for
Yeah.
us to, like, open up that landscape and say, okay, I started from this. Over the years, I'm here now. And there's progression,
Mm,
right, there's progression. I'm
yeah.
sure when you first started to dance to where you're at now, oh my god, there's a gradual
Mm,
difference, like huge
mm,
difference, you know and
yeah.
sometimes you amaze yourself and you're like, wow, like I can finally do those moves or those dances that I was never able to do. It's like you said earlier. You said, wow, I was surprised that I was able to do the quick turnaround, outfit change, and makeup in 2.5 minutes, right? That's
Yeah. Mm,
that's probably something that not all dancers can do. You know what I'm saying? That's
yeah.
probably not everyone can probably pull that off, but you did. And I think that was the
Mm,
difference between you and someone else, is that you're
yeah.
like, you were able to like figure it out and get it done, and you made it happen. You made it happen. So,
Mm,
that's the difference. But yeah, once again,
yeah.
Amrapali, I wanna take the time to thank you for your time and your energy, and for sitting down with us and, talking to us a little bit about, who you are as a performer, as an artist. I think there's going to be a lot of, people out there, and I'm glad you did the interview, because, if there's potential people out there that, want to get to know more about you and know who you are, and what you do and what you bring to the table. Like, I think, this was definitely a great opportunity. So I'm going to leave you with, letting your listeners or future listeners know, like, how can they find you if they're interested in seeing more of your performances and getting to know a little bit more about what you do. Like, you're welcome to, kind of just give them your message and tell them any links to your, work that you have, and how they can get a hold of you.
Yes, definitely. But before that, I would really want to thank you for inviting me for your podcast. And it felt so effortless for me. I just felt like having a conversation, like I'm having a very deep, meaningful conversation with you.
Hmm.
Uh, so grateful. Thank you so much for this.
No problem.
And thank you for sharing your journey as well, because it's so incredible to know about your life, and, you being so vulnerable about your, incidents and your life, which is very, very, very heartwarming.
No,
Thanks a lot.
no problem. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
for my listeners, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and I also have a YouTube channel under my name, Aamrapali Bhandari, AMRAPALI BHANDARI. And yeah, I would love to, you know, stay connected, and you can just drop a DM, and I would love to have a conversation, know about you. And I love it when, people online, they meet in real life, they come say hi, and
Hmm.
it's so incredible to have a community of artists who feel safe enough to have a conversation. So I think that is what, as artists, also, you and I think, have the same
Hmm.
vision, that, to have a community that's safe and secure for people to come up and share their vulnerabilities and their, thoughts about their lives or art. And I think that is incredible
Yeah.
to be
No,
part of.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. And that's why I like, as artists, as you mentioned earlier, as me and you as artists, it's sometimes our job, right, to advocate for other artists and let people know, like, what they do, what they're doing, because you never know. There could be someone out there that either wants to learn that, dancing like you, or there could be another person out there that wants to learn photography like me. So
Mm.
it's a very big world when it comes down to the arts, right?
Yes.
And as a brand ambassador and advocate for the arts, it's my job to tell other people and let other people know that there's so much talent out there. You just have to find it and look at it and look into it, and hopefully that inspires you to continue to do what you're doing, and never give up. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I think it's easier to give up than to actually start
Yes.
something, you know? Um,
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
yeah, it's
And
easy.
especially giving up midway, Like you
Yes.
start something and then you just give it up,
Yep.
midway. That okay, I'm not
A-
doing it. Yeah.
yep, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And again, I I sometimes, I think about like my OCD, right? And in many cases, it's kind of been a blessing for me because that actually keeps me on my toes, right? Like that makes me start and finish something, because if I didn't
Yeah.
if I didn't have that, I think I would be all over the place. I would be like a huge mess.
Mm. Mm.
I would begin a project and I would never finish it or complete it, and so I think that's
Correct.
that's been like a blessing. A lot of people say it's a blessing in disguise, and it kind of is. It kind of is.
Mm.
So it
Mm.
works in different ways. But once again, Aamrapali, thank you so much for coming on here. I really appreciate it. I got a good opportunity and chance to sit down with you and talk a little bit about everything, culture, passion, art, all that stuff. And so, I hope you continue to thrive and continue to do good in your art and in your performances. And that I'll be continuing to look at your work and continue to like root for you, and hopefully bigger things come your way. And so, like I said, thanks again for stopping by. It was a pleasure having you here. And like I said, we'll stay in touch and keep up the great work.
Yes. Thank you so much again. Thank you. Hope to see you sometime
Yeah, most
soon.
definitely, most
Mm.
definitely.
All
Yeah,
the best.
if
Yes.
I get a chance, to escape, and go out to India, I would love to. I know
Yes.
I know that one of my friends is like a director out there, and we talked about it, right?
Yes.
We talked about it, and
Mm.
I'll send you one of his bigger projects, but we talked about it,
Definitely.
and I said, you know what, one day, hopefully, if I come out, like maybe we could work on a project together. And he's like, yeah, I would love to. So who knows? Who knows?
Mm.
Who knows?
Of
Maybe
course.
when the
Of course.
opportunity comes, like I'd like to,
Yeah.
get on a plane and go out there and see what I can do. So once again,
Yes.
thank you so
Definitely.
much. Stay blessed, take care, and keep up the great work. Tk you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye
Uh,
bye.
all right.
Thanks.
All right. Bye bye.